The first night he slept in his car, he didn't cry. He sat in the driver's seat with both hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the house. He no longer owned his house until the porch light finally went out. Inside, his 3 children were asleep. Outside, their father had nowhere to go. By morning, his job would be gone. By the end of the week, his name would no longer mean husband, provider, or father. It would be replaced by a word he had never imagined carrying: abuser. This is the story of a man who lost his home, his career, and his children to a lie he couldn't prove was false, and how years later, without revenge, without violence, and without breaking the law, the truth found its way back to him. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. David Chen had never been a man of excess. His apartment was clean but modest, his car practical, his wardrobe functional. He worked as a civil engineer for the city's public works department, a stable job with decent benefits and predictable hours. Not wealthy, but comfortable, secure. When he married Maya 3 years into their relationship, he thought he'd found someone who valued the same things: stability, honesty, building something steady together. She came from a different world, a childhood marked by evictions, utility shutoffs, her mother working 3 jobs. He understood why financial security mattered to her. It mattered to him, too. The first year was good. They lived in his 2-bedroom condo in a quiet part of the city. Maya worked part-time at a medical billing office while studying for her certification exam. They had dinner together most nights. On weekends, they'd take walks through the park or browse farmers markets, splitting a pastry and talking about eventually buying a house. Small dreams, achievable ones. Their first daughter, Emma, arrived in year 2. Then Sophie 14 months later. Then, unexpectedly, their son Michael. 3 children under 4. Maya stopped working. David's salary covered rent, groceries, daycare when needed, the basics. They weren't struggling, but there wasn't much left over. That's when the requests started. At first, they were reasonable. Maya's younger brother needed help with community college tuition just 1 semester. Her mother's car broke down. Could they cover the repairs? David said yes both times. He wanted to help. Family mattered, but the requests didn't stop. Her cousin needed bail money. Her aunt was behind on rent. Her mother's medications weren't fully covered. Each time, Maya framed it as temporary, as necessary, as what families did for each other. Each time, David tried to help. But when he suggested they create a budget, set limits, she bristled. "You don't understand what it's like," she said one evening, her voice tight. They were sitting at the kitchen table, Emma asleep in her room, Sophie fussing in the playpen. "You've never had to choose between electricity and groceries." "I'm not saying no," David said carefully. "I'm saying we need to be smart. We have 3 kids now. We need savings, an emergency fund." "My family is an emergency." "Some of these aren't emergencies, Maya. Your brother's tuition, he's taking 6 classes. He could take 4 and work part-time." Her jaw tightened. "So you want my family to suffer because you're too cheap to help?" "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." The argument ended there, like most of their arguments, with silence, with her retreating to the bedroom, with David sitting alone at the table wondering how wanting financial responsibility made him the villain. Over the next year, the resentment grew. Maya stopped asking and started telling. She'd transfer money from their joint account without discussion. When David noticed and brought it up, she'd accuse him of controlling her, of treating her like a child, of not trusting her. "It's our money," she'd say. "Exactly," David would reply. "So we should decide together." But they never did. By the time their 3rd anniversary passed, something fundamental had shifted. Maya stopped smiling at him, stopped touching him casually, those small moments of affection that had once been constant. She moved through the house like a stranger, speaking to him only about logistics, who was picking up diapers, when the pediatrician appointment was, whether he'd paid the electric bill. David tried. He suggested counseling. She refused. He tried having calm conversations about budgeting, about finding compromises. She shut down or lashed out. He didn't know how to reach her anymore. He didn't know she'd stopped trying to reach him at all. The night it happened was unremarkable until it wasn't. David came home from work at 6:15 p.m. The same time he always did. The apartment was quiet except for the television in the living room. The kids were at Maya's mother's house for the evening, a weekly arrangement that had started a few months back. Maya was waiting for him in the kitchen. "We need to talk," she said. David set down his keys. "Okay. I want you to give my mother $10,000. He blinked. "What?" "She's behind on her mortgage. If she doesn't pay, she'll lose the house." David's pulse quickened. $10,000. They didn't have $10,000. Their savings account had maybe $4, earmarked for the kids' future. "Maya, don't say we can't afford it. We can't afford it." Her eyes hardened. "You're choosing to let my mother become homeless. That's not fair. I didn't create her situation." "No, but you're refusing to fix it." "I can't fix it." His voice rose, frustration finally breaking through. "Even if I emptied our entire savings, it's not enough." "And then what? What happens in 6 months, when she's behind again?" "We can't keep—" "So that's it," Maya interrupted, her voice cold. "You've decided my family doesn't matter." "That's not what I'm saying." "Then prove it. Get the money." "From where, Maya? We have 3 kids. We have rent, utilities, food. I can't just—" She stepped closer, her face inches from his. "You're a coward. You hide behind numbers and budgets because you're too selfish to actually help people." Something snapped in David. Not violently, just something broke. Years of being made to feel guilty for basic financial responsibility, for wanting stability, for trying to protect their own children's future. "I'm done," he said quietly. "Done with what?" "This. Being manipulated. Being told I'm the problem because I won't bankrupt us." Maya's expression shifted. For a moment, David thought he saw something flicker. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. But it passed quickly. "Get out," she said. "What?" "Get out of my house. It's my condo, Maya. My name is on the lease." "I don't care. Get out." "I'm not leaving." That's when she screamed. It was so sudden, so piercing, that David actually stepped back. She screamed again, and then she was on the floor, clutching her arm, sobbing. "Maya, what?" "Don't touch me," she shrieked. David froze. His mind struggled to process what was happening. She was on the floor. She was crying. She was holding her arm like— "No." "Maya," he said slowly, "what are you doing?" She looked up at him, and her eyes were cold, calculated, empty. "You pushed me," she said. His blood went ice cold. "I didn't touch you. You pushed me." "Maya, stop. This isn't—" She pulled out her phone. "I need to call the police," she said into the receiver, her voice shaking convincingly. "My husband attacked me. Please send someone." David stood there, paralyzed, as his life began to collapse. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They separated David and Maya immediately. An officer took his statement in the hallway, while another stayed with Maya inside. David explained what happened, the argument, the request for money, her sudden scream, the accusation. The officer's expression remained neutral, professional, but David could see it, the doubt. "Has there been any prior domestic violence in the relationship?" the officer asked. "No, never." "Any arguments that got physical?" "No." "She says you pushed her during an argument about money." "I didn't. I swear to you. I didn't touch her." The officer nodded, writing something down. "We're going to need you to come with us, Mr. Chen." "Am I being arrested?" "We're taking you in for questioning." It felt like the same thing. At the station, David repeated his story 3 times to 3 different people. He was calm, factual, insistent. He hadn't touched her. She was lying. This was about money, about manipulation, about— "Mr. Chen," the detective said, "your wife has visible bruising on her arm." David's world tilted. "That's impossible. We have photographs." "I didn't. She must have." He stopped. "How did you prove you didn't do something? How did you prove a negative?" They released him 6 hours later with a warning: stay away from the residence. A temporary restraining order would be filed within 48 hours. He was not to contact Maya. He was not to return to the condo. David walked out of the police station at 3 a.m., into air that felt too thin. He sat in his car in the parking lot, hands on the steering wheel, and tried to understand what had just happened. She'd lied. She'd hurt herself or faked injuries somehow, and lied to police. She'd weaponized the system against him. Why? The answer came slowly, horribly. Because she could. Because the accusation alone was enough. By Monday morning, David's life had unraveled completely. Human Resources called him at 9 a.m. He was being placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. The police report had been flagged. "It's just procedure," the HR director said. Her tone apologetic but firm. "Until this is resolved." "It's a lie," David said. "We have to follow protocol." He understood protocol. He understood liability. He understood that an accusation was enough to destroy someone, true or not. By Tuesday, the restraining order was official. He couldn't go within 500 feet of his own home, couldn't see his children, couldn't contact Maya except through lawyers. By Wednesday, his colleagues knew. Not because anyone told them directly, but because people talked. He saw it in their faces, the careful distance, the avoided eye contact, the sudden silence when he entered a room. By Friday, he'd hired a lawyer he couldn't afford. "This is going to be expensive," the attorney said. Margaret Torres was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, blunt. "And it's going to take time." How long? Months, maybe years. David felt something hollow open inside him. "I didn't touch her." "I believe you," Margaret said. "But belief doesn't matter in court. Evidence matters. And right now, the evidence is her word, her injuries, and a police report. So what do I do?" "You survive. You document everything. You follow every rule perfectly. And you wait." Surviving meant moving into a motel off Route 9. $70 a night he couldn't afford, in a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and disappointment. His administrative leave meant no paycheck. His savings, what little remained, hemorrhaged away. Lawyer retainers, motel fees, gas. Within a month, he couldn't afford the motel anymore. He spent his first night sleeping in his car in a grocery store parking lot. The seat didn't recline far enough. Security knocked on his window at 2 a.m. and told him to move along. He found a men's shelter across town. The intake coordinator was kind but efficient. Background check, health screening, assignment to a bunk in a room with 11 other men. David Chin, civil engineer, father of 3, sleeping on a cot in a homeless shelter. Some nights, the absurdity of it almost made him laugh. Most nights, it just made him tired. The divorce papers arrived in November. Maya was suing for full custody, child support, alimony, and possession of the condo. Her filing painted him as financially controlling, emotionally abusive, and dangerous. "She's claiming you isolated her from her family," Margaret said, reviewing the documents. "Refused to let her work. Monitored her spending." "That's insane." "Doesn't matter if it's true, it's in the filing." The court date was set for February. 4 months away. 4 months of limbo, of survival, of pretending he wasn't falling apart. David took a job washing dishes at a chain restaurant. Minimum wage, night shifts, burns on his forearms from scalding water. His co-workers were kind in that cautious way people are around someone they suspect is running from something. He didn't tell them he was running towards something, the truth. Every interaction, every receipt, every text message, he saved it all. He'd been documenting since the beginning, since the first police report, keeping meticulous records of everything. Because Margaret was right, evidence mattered, and David was patient. The preliminary hearing in February was brief and devastating. The judge granted Maya temporary full custody. David was allowed supervised visitation 2 hours every other Saturday, in a sterile room with a court monitor present. The first time he saw Emma, Sophie, and Michael in 4 months, they barely recognized him. Emma, now 5, clung to the monitor's leg. Sophie cried. Michael, barely 2, just stared. "It's okay," David said softly, kneeling down. "It's Daddy. Remember me?" Emma's face crumpled. "Mommy said you went away." Something in David's chest fractured. "I didn't want to go away, sweetheart. I've been trying to come back." But how do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother lied? That the system believed the lie? That justice moves slowly, if it moves at all? He spent 2 hours reading them picture books, playing with blocks, pretending everything was normal. When the monitor said time was up, Sophie screamed. She didn't want him to leave. Neither did he. Months blurred together. David worked, saved, attended court hearings that went nowhere. Maya's lawyer was aggressive, well-funded, probably paid for with money from David's own accounts. They painted him as a danger, a manipulator, a man who'd fooled everyone. But Margaret was methodical. She requested phone records, bank statements, medical reports. She deposed Maya twice. The second time, small cracks appeared. "You said he pushed you during the argument," Margaret said. "Yes." "And you fell backward?" "Yes." "Hitting your arm on the kitchen counter?" "Yes." "The counter is granite, correct?" I think so." Margaret produced photos of the kitchen. "This is your kitchen, correct?" "Yes." "Can you show me where you hit your arm?" Maya pointed. "So you fell here," Margaret said, marking it, "and struck this edge." "Yes." "The medical report shows bruising on the outer forearm. Here." She indicated the photos. "But the angle of impact you're describing would cause bruising on the inner forearm. Can you explain that?" Maya hesitated. "Just a fraction of a second, but it was there. I don't remember exactly." "You don't remember how you got injured?" "It happened fast." "But you remember being pushed?" "Yes." Margaret let the contradiction hang in the air. The unraveling took another year. A neighbor came forward, someone David barely knew, a woman who lived on the floor above. She'd been home the night of the incident. She'd heard shouting, heard Maya scream, then heard nothing. No sounds of a struggle. No crash. Just Maya's voice on the phone, already calling 911. "It didn't sound right," the neighbor testified. "It sounded staged." Then came the bank records. Margaret traced every transaction, every transfer. The pattern was damning. Money moved out of joint accounts, deposited into accounts belonging to Maya's family members, often within hours of arguments David had documented. Then came the medical examiner's second opinion. The bruising pattern didn't match a fall. It matched self-inflicted injury grip marks, where someone had squeezed their own arm hard enough to bruise. Maya's story began to collapse under the weight of its own inconsistencies. The final hearing was in March, 2 years and 4 months after that first terrible night. The courtroom was small, fluorescent lit, bureaucratic. David sat beside Margaret, his hands folded on the table. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. The neighbor's testimony, the bank records, the medical reanalysis, the contradictions in Maya's depositions. Maya sat across the aisle, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. She looked smaller than David remembered, tired, cornered. "Mrs. Chen," the judge said finally, "this court finds that your initial claims of assault were not substantiated by evidence and appear to have been fabricated." Maya's face went pale. "Further," the judge continued, "the evidence suggests a pattern of financial manipulation and deliberate false testimony. This court is referring your case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges, including perjury, filing a false police report, and conspiracy to commit fraud." David felt nothing, not relief, not vindication, just exhaustion. The custody arrangement was reversed, the restraining order vacated. David was granted primary custody pending further hearings. Maya was restricted to supervised visitation. It was over. Sort of. 3 months later, Maya was sentenced to 18 months in county jail for perjury and filing false reports. She'd taken a plea deal. David didn't attend the sentencing. He'd moved on to the harder work, rebuilding. His job was gone. HR had quietly let him go during the leave, citing restructuring. He found work as a project manager at a smaller firm, lower pay, but stable. He'd gotten his condo back, but it felt haunted. He sold it and moved the kids to a modest rental across town. Fresh start. Emma was in first grade now, Sophie in pre-K. Michael barely remembered the chaos. They adjusted slowly, carefully. Some nights, Emma asked where Mommy was. "She made some mistakes," David said carefully. "She's working through them." He didn't tell them she was in jail. Not yet, maybe not ever. Some truths were too heavy for small shoulders. On a Saturday in early autumn, David took the kids to the park. Emma and Sophie raced toward the swings. Michael toddled after them, laughing. David sat on a bench, watching them. The sun was warm. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. He thought about the past 3 years, the lies, the loss, the slow, grinding machinery of justice. He thought about how close he'd come to giving up, to disappearing, to letting the lie win. But lies, he'd learned, required energy, required maintenance, required perfect execution. Truth just required patience. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired, changed. He'd learned things about people, about systems, about himself that he wished he didn't know. But he'd also learned he was stronger than he thought. That survival was a choice made daily, hourly, in small acts of discipline and hope. Emma called to him from the swings. "Daddy, watch." He watched. And for the first time in 3 years, David Chen allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. The weight of lies was heavy. But truth, in the end, was heavier. And truth always won. Eventually,